everybody. Wow, what a treat. This is so nice. Please have a seat. Another big round of applause for Jackie, your next Congresswoman. She is running a very, very good race. I think the choice in her race is extremely clear, and I was so happy when I heard that she was going to be introducing me today. And it's great to be here at McDonald Ranch. Thank you guys for coming out today. I really appreciate it. It's been quite a week. It's been quite a week. I mean, maybe it's been quite a 10 days or so, starting with Hillary's fantastic debate 2 Mondays ago. I think she showed just what a great commander-in-chief and president she's going to be. I guess everybody probably had their favorite moment in that debate, but my favorite moment was near the end when Donald Trump was challenged for some things he'd said about her. I think he was challenged by Lester Holt for this comment, "She doesn't look presidential, does she, fellas?" And then Donald tried to say it wasn't about her looks, it was about her stamina. And Hillary just stood, she was straight up, and she said, "You go to 120 countries and you testify for 11 hours before Congress, and then come talk to me about stamina." And there was the split screen, and as she was saying it, I think everybody could look at her and know, I think she's got another 5 or 6 hours of debate in her. And Donald Trump kind of looked like there was an invisible lamppost that he was leaning against in the split screen. She just did a magnificent job. And then in the aftermath of that debate, as he took to the Twitter war because he wasn't happy with his performance, and then the story of the New York Times about his taxes added a number of other questions. And then I had a great time in my debate Tuesday night with Mike Pence. That was a lot of fun. And so we feel really good about Hillary's debate Sunday night. That town hall format is one that she's really good at. So things are going well, but the reason I'm in Nevada, and this is the third time I've been in Nevada since I got added to the ticket 70 days ago, is because you guys are important. I am here because Nevada is important. I guess when you chose the name Battleborn, you knew you would be a battleground. You're one of the first 4 states in that primary and caucus, first in because Harry Reid worked to make sure that Nevada would be one of the first 4. So when the parties are choosing their candidates, you have outsized influence at the very beginning, and then when you get to the very end of the race, a handful of states end up being the states where the race really gets decided, where it's close right up to Election Day. And on any list of that handful of states, again and again and again, Nevada, not Nevada. Nevada is one of those handfuls of states. The thing that interested me about all of that is, hey, look, I've been in politics for a while, and I've misspoken and sometimes mispronounced something. Okay, that happens. Now, I did learn when I first came to Nevada as chairman of the Democratic Party, the first thing everybody told me is, it's Nevada. They tell you if you're from out of state. Rule 1, don't get that wrong. So it's a little hard to make that mistake, but gosh, only Donald Trump would make that mistake. And then when he's corrected, he would know, you guys have to change the way you're pronouncing it. My way is a better way of pronouncing it. I mean, wow, you cannot make this up. You cannot make this up. Well, listen, let me do some thank yous, and then I want to talk about a couple of issues that are important, I think, to you. But then what I really want to do is take your questions and take your suggestions. I have had a political career entirely in one state, Virginia. I know what Virginians think about most issues pretty well. But it's wrong to assume that everybody thinks exactly the same way as the constituents that I've represented for 22 years. So here I am in Battleground, Nevada, and I want to get into a dialogue so I can understand the issues that matter to you. Some thank yous. It's great to be here at McDonald Ranch in Sun City McDonald Ranch, and I want to thank the general manager, Ron Winkle, who's sitting right here, for making this available. Thank you, Ron. And I also had a chance to meet with longtime resident and board member Dan Hine. Dan, thank you so much. Thank you. And again, I'm really happy to be here with Jackie. It's not easy to do this. I've been in elected office now since 1994. It's tough, and it's getting tougher in some ways. The family sacrifice, and you don't really have any privacy if you make a mistake, and you're going to make a mistake. We're all human. It's going to be in full view of everybody. and people aren't that inclined to give a politician a break or a benefit of the doubt, so you're going to have to endure a little bit of that. You have to have thick skin, but people who do what Jackie is doing, I really admire. So I'm so happy that she's here. And then I want to tell you, I've got some really special, the Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. And then I have some really special people here with me, my mom and dad. So, Kathy and Al Kaine. Kathy and Al, my parents live in Kansas City, where I grew up. Oh, man, some Kansas City. All right, good. I like. All right. Where I grew up, and I met a Virginian who is a much better negotiator than me 32 years ago. And so I've been a Virginian for 32 years. My wife, Ann, so we got Virginia ties, too. But my parents came out to watch the debate in Farmville, and then they decided to travel with me for a few days. They'd never seen a plane with Kaine painted on the fuselage before, so they decided, they would come along, and we've had a lot of fun together. I'm sure a lot of people will say this, and they'll say it with the absolute rock-solid conviction, but I'm going to say it with the rock-solid conviction, I could not have had better parents. I mean, they're just so fantastic. And one of the things I love most about my parents is I'm the oldest of 3 boys. Anytime anybody says something to my parents like, "You must be really proud of your son," they just immediately respond, "We are so proud of all 3 of our sons." They think I'm okay in politics, but my other brothers do really cool things too, and they treat us all great, and that's something that I really love about them very much. Well, the race. What's at stake? I'm going to talk just vision, what's at stake, and a little bit about the debate and a couple of issues that really are issues of concern to everybody, but especially the seniors that I want to grapple with. What's at stake? Big picture, what's at stake is a vision, a difference in vision. Policies, sometimes they can be a little bit like laundry lists. We'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. But they got to be connected to something, or they are just like a laundry list. And there's a vision that drives our campaign, and there's a vision that drives the other campaign. Hillary chose, before I was added to the ticket, so I get no credit for the choice, but I'm going to tell you how much it means to me, this vision, Stronger Together. And it really reflects who she is. Hillary Clinton really kind of got her start in terms of her passion for life in a Methodist youth group in the suburbs of Chicago. She had this really interesting pastor, a guy named Don Jones, who must have been quite a guy, because I meet people around the country who tell me Don Jones was my youth group pastor. He didn't always make the church guys happy, so I think he moved around a lot. But he made a huge impact on the lives of kids that he touched. And Hillary Clinton was in a youth group that he ran, and he made a huge impression on her. And she decided when she was a teenager, I really want to make my life about serving others, and with a particular focus on how to make families and children successful. And her attitude is kind of a barometer. If families and children succeed, then everything in society is going to go a lot better. If you just focus on that, and you do that well, then everything goes better. The first book that she wrote when she was First Lady, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child, was all about this notion of the responsibility that we all have to help children and families be successful. And so that's why she picked this. She believes Stronger Together. That's an American value. E pluribus unum, out of many one. There's a togetherness thing. In order to form a more perfect union, there's a community concept put into that, and that's what Hillary believes. And we have a 3-pillar campaign. This book is filled with our policies, because we think if we're interviewing for the job, we ought to tell you, here's what we'll do, here's how it'll help, here's how we'll pay for it, here's how it will affect communities. So we put it all in here. And there are 3 basic pillars. And the first pillar is we want to build an economy that works for everybody, not just a few, and that's over the course of everybody's life, from when they start into school through being seniors. An economy that works for all, not just for a few. That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is we need to be leaders in the world. America plays a leadership role, and how are we strong? We're strong when we have a strong military, certainly. I imagine I have a number of veterans in this room. I've got a boy who's a Marine Infantry commander deployed overseas for the second time right now, my oldest son. We want to have a strong military, but we're also stronger together. You need strong alliances in the world of today. You know, no man is an island and no country is an island either. You have to have strong alliances, and as a diplomat, Hillary has the ability and understands how to forge alliances. So that's the second piece, stronger together. And third, let's build a community of respect. We're stronger together when we respect each other. We don't need to trash each other. We don't need to point fingers at different groups here or there or blame others. If we can build a community of respect, that also makes us stronger. This is who I am too. I grew up in Kansas City. I was educated by Jesuits who kind of put a thumbprint on my forehead of serving others. The motto of my all-boys high school was men for others. That's often the case in Jesuit high schools, men for others or persons for others. I was a missionary in Honduras for a year with Jesuits back in 1980 and 81. Hace 35 años yo trabajé en Honduras como maestro de carpintería y soldadura. De Honduras también. Excelente, excelente, ok. Gracias por su apoyo. And then I was a civil rights lawyer in Richmond for 17 years before I got into state politics. So bridge building is what I like to do, and that stronger together theme means an awful lot to me. When Donald Trump decided to run for president, he wrote a book, and he chose a title too. And the title was his way of saying, here's how I look at this country. And this is the book that was Donald Trump's basically intro to running for president. Crippled America. Now, I want you to compare too the pictures. So one is kind of happy and upbeat and optimistic, and one, no, I didn't pick that picture of Donald Trump. That was the picture that he chose for himself to put on this book. But first, the term crippled America, I don't like that phrase. I think that's an old-timey kind of phrase, that's not the way we talk now. But second, it's a dark and gloomy view. He's up in a penthouse in a tower looking down and frowning at what he sees. I don't see that in this country. Do we have challenges? Of course. There's not a single zip code in this country where we don't have challenges, and we have challenges in the world too. That is very much the case. We all acknowledge that. But we don't need to be pessimistic or doom and gloomy about our ability to solve our challenges. We've always had the ability to solve challenges if we just work on them together. If we let everybody around the table to participate in solving the challenges, we can do it. If we push people away from the table or finger point or blame, then we find that we have trouble. So that's really, for starters, the way I think about this race. And although I didn't like to give Donald Trump a royalty by buying this, I will say it's a motivator for me. I carry these around with me because it motivates me in terms of what the difference in vision is. And I'll tell you one other thing. I just learned this yesterday. I have been carrying these books around and doing this, and I did it on TV about a month ago on a bunch of the Sunday shows. I did 5 Sunday morning shows, and I think I did it on 4 of them, held up the books. Yesterday, we got word that there is a new edition of this book being published, and now it has a smiling Donald Trump in it. And the title is Great Again. They've changed the title of the book. So I've already, brought people together. I mean, I'm already making change. And I'm not getting any royalties as far as I understand. But anyway, difference in vision. At the debate the other night, my goal was this. I wanted to make sure that I defended my running mate because I really, really respect Hillary Clinton because of the reason that I told you, that she's had this passion for families and kids her entire life. I respect her, and I've watched as they've, dumped an avalanche of claims on her, many completely unfounded. And so my job was to aggressively be her defender and her champion and her promoter. And I did that, and I was proud to do it. And it made me feel good in the day or two after the debate that none of the stories about the debate were about any new line of attack or any new challenge that came up for Hillary. I really wanted that to be what I focused on. And then I wanted to do something else too. And this actually is something that's continuing to get some stories. I wanted to just lay Donald Trump's words down in front of Governor Pence and say, I can't believe you can defend this. And not just words, but actions too. I can't believe you can defend this. And I did that over and over and over again. Somebody went and counted. It was about 9 times during the debate. And Governor Pence, you know, I'll tell you, he might have made the right decision, because what I would do is I would lay that down and I would say, I can't believe you can defend this. And I could see the wheel like turning, and usually he would decide, yeah, I'd rather talk about something else. I'd rather not defend it. And so he would, you know, move on and present something else that he wanted to talk about. But it gave me the opportunity about 2/3 of the way through the debate to say, just look at what's happening here. If you're not willing to defend your own running mate, how can you ask even one person to vote for him? I mean, if you are the number 2 guy on this ticket and you can't defend Donald Trump's actions and words, then how can you ask anybody else to support him? And that is a theme that we're going to be continuing to play all the way through Election Day with some of the clips from that debate. And I think that's a question that well, from what I understand, Donald Trump was watching that debate too, and it was not lost on him that Mike Pence would not defend him over and over and over again, that Mike Pence wouldn't do it. And I think that is something. I'm proud to get up every day and to support Hillary Clinton and defend her and promote her and talk about our plans, and that's something that Governor Pence is a little less comfortable doing. One issue we talked about in the debate was Social Security. Social Security is probably one of the 2 or 3 best things that Congress has ever done. And in terms of doing what it was intended to do, everybody knows this story, but I don't think we can tell this story too much. Before FDR got Social Security passed, you would work your entire life, and not just work. You would work at your job and raise your family, but you would be the Little League coach, and you would be on the parish council, and you would be on the PTA. You would do all the things that all of you have done throughout your life outside of your work, and then you would retire, and vastly more than 50% of American seniors, as soon as they retired, would be in poverty. I mean, there's just something so unjust about that. After all the contribution and all the work, not only to help your family, but help society, that you would then be under poverty. And so that's why FDR said, we're going to create Social Security. And when it was initially created, it was a more modest program, and that is expanded. But instead of far greater than 50% of seniors living in poverty today, it's about 10%. Now that's 10% too many, but that's a dramatic change. Social Security was intended for a reason, and it's met that reason. And we absolutely have to first do no harm, make sure we protect something that has worked and worked so well. And this is something that Hillary Clinton and I are just rock solid committed to. It's working. And we're not going to fool around with it in ways that will make it not work. First, we oppose the kind of privatization schemes that both Donald Trump and Governor Pence have promoted in the past. Donald Trump now says he's not for it, but he wrote an earlier book before this one. And in another book that he wrote, he said privatization will be good for all of us, and that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. The Ponzi scheme thing is a really kind of a vicious charge. It basically says Social Security's racket. When you read what he means by that, he doesn't like the fact that current workers are chipping in money to pay for current retirees. He would rather it be current workers chip in money that go into an account that then they could get later on in life. And he doesn't like the fact that current workers chip in money that go to current retirees. And so he calls that a Ponzi scheme as if it's some kind of racket. I just call it shared responsibility. I'm a current worker, and I have no problem. I have no problem as a worker in the workplace chipping in to support the people who have been my elementary school teachers and Little League coaches and my own parents. I've got no problem with that notion. That's just a community thing. It's not a Ponzi scheme. And then when Governor Pence was a congressman, he really was probably the chief cheerleader in Congress for Social Security privatization. Even after President Bush decided, I'm probably not going to be able to get this through Congress, Governor Pence continued on it. So there's a real difference between these tickets. On Social Security, we will protect and preserve it. We will look for ways to make sure that it stays stable and solvent for a long time to come. We won't change the way the CPI is calculated to the less favorable change CPI that some of you have read about. There's different proposals with respect to the CPI adjustment every year, and there's some that would be really tough on seniors, and we're not going to support them. And we're going to make sure that we maintain a CPI that's fair and that isn't stacked against you. And so that is our commitment to you, and I will just tell you, rock solid, we've never wavered off it. We haven't written books praising privatization, now have to come and cover our tracks. When I challenged Governor Pence on this the other day at the debate, I said, you guys supported privatization. No, we didn't. I said, well, Donald Trump wrote a book and he said he supported it. But no, he didn't. I said, well, just go check the book out. And we're not having to cover our tracks. We've been supporters of this program because we know how important it is and we will protect it. A couple of other issues that didn't come up so much in the debate, but I just want to talk about, and then I want to open it up and take your questions. After I just say one word at the end about Nevada, how important Nevada is, and how the race is looking right now. First, we want to invest in the caring economy. This is an issue, I talked about this in my convention speech in Philadelphia, that we are a nation of caregivers because we're caring people, but one good thing is that we're living longer. That's fantastic. That's a great thing. But that also means that the need to be family caregivers expands as we live longer. I mean, I'll tell you something that I'm really happy about. I knew 2 of my 4 grandparents. One had died before I was born, and one died before I can even remember. So I only know 2 of my 4. My 2 younger brothers really only knew 1 of their 4 grandparents, especially my youngest brother. But because we're living longer, I have 3 children, 26, 24, 21, and all their 4 grandparents are still alive. What a great thing, right? And so my children have these great relationships with all 4 grandparents now. My folks in their 80s, my wife's folks in their 90s. I know they look like they're in their 60s. I know they look like that. But the longer life expectancy puts this caregiving challenge on us. And it's not just about caring for parents. My wife's sister has early onset Alzheimer's and was diagnosed at age 55. And so the principal caregiving has obviously been my brother-in-law, but my wife has been very involved in caregiving for her sister-in-law. So many people are, illnesses. So we are a caregiving community, but we haven't necessarily adjusted our policies to reflect that reality. And so we want to do a tax credit for those who do caregiving of 20% tax credit for the expenses that you incur up to $6,000 to make it just a little bit easier, That still won't make caregiving easy. I'm not here to tell you that that's a policy that will just make it all super simple, but it's at least an acknowledgement that this is something that so many families do, and we ought to try to make caregiving just a little bit easier for those who do it. So that's number 1. Number 2, Hillary and I are huge believers in research. Research of all kinds. Research in the clean energy jobs of tomorrow, for example. But a lot of the research that we think is really important is research into medical conditions, especially into Alzheimer's. I have worked very hard, and the good news is this is real bipartisan. This is really bipartisan. I am on the aging committee in the Senate. They just put me on it a year ago. I don't know why. I mean, I can't imagine why they just put me on the aging committee all of a sudden. I guess it's anyway. But it's a great committee because we're grappling with issues that affect seniors, and one of the things we spend a lot of time grappling with is caregiving and also medical research. My chair and ranking member, Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, and Claire McCaskill, Democrat of Missouri, great committee chair and ranking members. And on this issue of Alzheimer's research, we're completely bipartisan. And this year, with great advocacy by the Alzheimer's Association nationally, we dramatically increased research for Alzheimer's because it was just a fraction, for example, of, say, cancer and other research, which obviously need a lot of research, but Alzheimer's really had kind of been lagging in the back. And given the effect on the American economy and on families of Alzheimer's, we need to race ahead. So our goal is $2 billion a year for Alzheimer's research, and let's set the goal of finding a cure by 2025. If you don't set a goal, you never get there. We got to set that goal, make the investments, and do that. We want to expand Medicare to cover comprehensive care planning. let's make clear that if you are a Medicare recipient and then you want to engage with a physician and family around comprehensive care, that can be covered by Medicare too. Not required to, but if you want to do it, you shouldn't have to do that out of your own pocket. You should be able to do that with Medicare covering it. And then another thing that the Alzheimer's Society is really focusing on is better care coordination, because there's so much care that is often needed, whether it's medical care or in-home care, caregiving for somebody with Alzheimer's. Can we coordinate it better and have the payments a little bit easier to apply across all kinds of care that somebody needs? And then the last thing we want to do is we really want to go after this issue of the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs. It's very important. Okay, well, I can tell that since that's my biggest applause line yet, after Nevada, not Nevada, that this is an issue that really touches everybody. It sure does in Virginia too. Nevadans, on average, last year filled roughly 13 prescriptions per person, and that is a total retail expenditure in this state on prescription drugs of $2 billion. And so if we can figure out a way to hold costs down, or at least stop the growth of prescription drugs, and there's some where the costs go up for reasons because research is expensive, but we've had some examples, and you've probably seen them on TV recently, where they just, a company will decide, let's see, you need what I have, and nobody else provides it. And I'm not spending any money on the research because we've done the research many years ago, but because I know you need it, I'm not going to treat you like a patient. I'm not even going to treat you like a person. I'm going to kind of treat you like a hostage. And I'm going to just jack this thing up because I know you have to have it. And that's not everybody in the pharmaceutical industry, but boy, if you don't rout out the bad apples, the whole industry gets a black eye. And so we're going to work on that to stop prescription drugs from going up so much. One of the things that I've sponsored for a long time is allowing Medicare to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies to bring down prescription drug prices in Medicare Part D. I'm sure Jackie's a strong supporter of this and knows this. It's kind of wacky, the policy we have in this country. The VA can negotiate with pharmaceutical companies on prescription drug pricing. You know, the volume discount thing, if you're buying a lot, you ought to be able to get a better price, and the VA can do that. But under Medicare Part D, when it was passed, there was a provision put in saying that no, but the federal government could not negotiate under Medicare Part D. If you could do it like that, you'd be saving, and the federal treasury would be saving. If we just got the savings that the VA gets, because we already know that they are able to get a price test, if we just get that savings, it would be so good for our deficit, and it would be so good for our patients because they would be able to have prescription drugs more easily. So this is something that we're going to push, and we're going to push very, very hard. Let me just conclude and say just a word about the race and how it looks and how we love your help, and then I want to open it up and take some questions. Right now it's close. It was a lot closer 10 days ago than it is now, but that means 10 days from now it could look different. It's been a season of surprises. It's been up and it's been down. In fact, it's kind of funny. When we came into the first convention, the Republican convention in Cleveland was first. It was a dead heat. When we came out of the Philadelphia convention, I had been added to the ticket. I don't give myself all the credit, but suddenly we were way ahead. I'm joking. I think I helped a lot in Virginia, but the reason we went ahead is because in Philadelphia, we showed a real positive vision of Hillary in the country, and the Cleveland convention was a little more like this. So we came out and we had a big lead. But then by Labor Day, it had settled back down, and by the Hillary's first debate 2 Mondays ago, I mean, it basically was a dead heat, and some polls nationally had Donald Trump up. Well, after the debate, things have gone our way. So we feel like we got some good momentum. But a lot of states are close, and Nevada's one of the closest. We look at about a dozen states that we would call true battleground states, and some of them, Virginia's looking really good right now, and Colorado's looking good, Pennsylvania's looking good. So the number of states is starting to narrow down, but there's still some really close ones, and Nevada is one. And I guess what I just would remind you, and Jackie mentioned this too, here you can register, I think up to the 18th of October. Jackie, is that registration day? And I think as it's 18th in person, and tomorrow, okay. Okay, so tomorrow is the last day to register in person, tomorrow. And then is there a different date if you register online? And that's the 18th. Okay, so tomorrow in person and the 18th. And then early in-person voting starts on October 22nd. And that runs till November 4. If you know anybody who isn't registered, obviously there's all kinds of in-person places to register, but you can also go to iwillvote.com. Anywhere in the United States, if you're voting, you can go to that, and they will direct you to the right place to register in the state that you're in. So that's really important. And then the last thing I'll tell you is this. You might not think this matters because we are a nation of 330 million people, but the person to person is actually now getting more important, not less important. And that's because all the TV ads, people get tired of them. A lot of them are so negative, you don't know who paid for them. Is it true? I don't know whether it's true or not. So you see ads and you kind of wonder about it. And I think a lot of voters who are still very interested, but they kind of tune out what they're seeing on TV. But one thing they won't tune out is a word from somebody they trust. So a friend or a neighbor or a parishioner or somebody you work with, somebody you go to school with, a word from a friend matters. And also, even if you don't know somebody, and if you're a volunteer, and I know many of you here are doing some volunteering with the campaign, that really matters too. I found this in my own campaigns in Virginia. If I have volunteers working for me and they call and they say, I'm a volunteer working for Tim Kaine, the first thing the person hears on the phone or on the door is, well, you're a volunteer. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to do it, but you're doing it. I wonder why. And then it kind of opens up an opportunity to have a discussion. And so I hope some of you might volunteer too. If you want to volunteer here in Nevada in the closing stretch, all you have to do is text together to 47246. Last thing I'll say, then open it up, is I'll just tell you a little bit about me and elections. I'm 8-0, and I'm going to be 9-0 come November 8th. I'm not intending to lose. Now, I always say that, and I know that sounds kind of immodest, and so then I have to follow up and tell you the full story, which is I barely win my races. I mean, my races are really close. I'm not a landslide type guy, and I tell people a lot that I've just proven to be just barely likable enough, you know, in every race that I've run. But part of that's because Virginia's a battleground state too. In fact, when I started running statewide, we were redder than red. And we've worked our way to battleground status. It's a little bit easier now, but it's a tough place to run and win. It's been really tough as a Democrat to run and win. When I got elected to statewide office for the first time, the day before I was elected, all 5 statewide office holders were Republicans, and we hadn't gone Democratic in a presidential year for 44 years. We were really, really red. Well, now it's a little bit easier. But the way I have been able to win all my races in tough real estate is with this attitude of I'm the underdog till I'm the winner. So this is my way of thinking. And I'll tell you, Hillary Clinton's that kind of person. She looks at it exactly the same way. She's trying to do something that's never been done. Be the first woman president in the history of the United States. So that is something that is, you know, you have to consider yourself the underdog. I bet there are people here who've tried to do something for the first time, maybe in your family or your neighborhood or your community. You've tried to do something for the first time, or maybe you've tried to do something that people said you can't do, or it's somebody else's turn, or the time isn't right for you, or, oh, this probably isn't an opportunity that you're going to be able to do. People here have heard that in their lives, and I'll tell you, Hillary Clinton's heard that her whole life. I mean, she's heard it her whole life from a kid through trying to be a public servant and a senator. She's heard it in this campaign. You know, why don't you smile more, people are saying, or you don't look very presidential. This is the kind of stuff that she's heard. But that gives her that underdog mentality, too. And that's why I think she's got the discipline and the temperament and the preparation to succeed and be a great president. So thanks for having me today. I really appreciate the chance to come. And now I'd love to open it up and take some questions. And if you wouldn't mind, when you ask a question, just tell me your name, please, sir. Hey, Mr. Enkelman.
Has improved over recent years, but there are still a lot of issues.
Yes.
Do you have specific plans to continue improvements or accelerate improvements?
Yeah, great question, Mr. Enkelman, and thank you for your service in the Army. So the question, because you didn't get the mic till the end, was about the VA system. What's the plan that we have? And Mr. Enkelman pointed out, and it's true, that there have been improvements, but we got a long way to go. This was the VA when President Obama came into office in 2009. They still didn't have electronic records. Everything was being done by paper. Even on something like a GI Bill benefit that you can get to attend college, you were having to fill out an application and it was having, to be mailed to Buffalo for an answer about whether you would get your tuition instead of just get on a computer and just, hit send and it's right there. So it was a very antiquated system. Second, the demand for services was growing because of Iraq and Afghan war vets who need significant service. Third, President Obama made a good decision, which was to allow more Vietnam-era vets who had exposure to Agent Orange to be treated more easily with the VA. So you add all those three things, an antiquated system, more demand, and this compassionate decision about VA benefits for folks who were exposed to Agent Orange. They've really had a crushing workload. And it showed itself in two really significant problems. One, long waiting times for appointments. So our veterans around the country, depended on which hospital you were going to, but we're seeing some wait times that were outrageous. And in some VA hospitals, they were even, kind of manipulating the data to hide the fact that the waits were so long. And then second, if you're trying to get a disability benefit approved, the application time between when you apply for disability and then the decision, and then you got to appeal. And it can be so long that it's really tough on vets. So the two things that we have to keep doing, we have to keep bringing down these wait times. And the way we do it is through personnel and facilities, and a little bit through opening up the ability of vets to go to private providers. So we need to hire more medical professionals into the VA. That's part of it. We need to have some additional facilities to, more operating rooms, more examination rooms so that you're not backed up there. And then we do have this pilot project, which is still in pilot form right now, to allow veterans who live more than a certain number of miles away from a VA facility or who live within the number of miles if the VA has too long a waiting list to be able to go to private providers. And we're still trying to make that work better. I don't think that is working as well as it can, but I do think that's a partial answer to this. And Hillary and I are very, very committed to this. Please. Yeah, right here, ma'am, on the aisle.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Rita Fisher.
Hey, Rita.
Hi. I'm 58 years old, and I've never experienced personally or professionally any prejudices. And I know that's largely in part, I want to believe that's largely in part due to the shoulders that I'm standing on from those who came before me. Right now, there's a lot going on, and I understand that all lives matter, but right now, Black Lives Matter is what's really in the forefront. And my question to you is, what are you and our next president, Hillary Clinton, planning to do to make sure we not regress, but continue to progress?
Yeah, well, it's a stronger together question. So let me, and everybody heard the question, let me talk about three things. So as I mentioned earlier, I was a civil rights lawyer in Richmond, Virginia, capital of the Confederacy. We were a city with some history and with some scar tissue, and working as a city councilman and mayor there, in addition to being a civil rights attorney, an awful lot of what I have tried to do has been about bridge building between communities. And then even as governor of Virginia, we're so diverse with oystermen and coal miners and bluegrass musicians and high-tech execs and our cities and our farms. We're very diverse, so it's about bridge building. With respect to racial justice, there are three things that Hillary and I are focused on in particular, and I'll just talk about them. So the economy and criminal justice reform, and then voting rights and civil rights issues. So on the economy, we've got to build this economy that works for all. Now, 15 million new private sector jobs under President Obama, the unemployment rate's down, and 401ks are worth something again. But a lot of people in the country, they don't see that there's a ladder there for them to climb. A lot of folks in our cities don't. Some folks in rural America don't. Coal country in Appalachia, where my wife's family is from, Indian country, there are people who don't see the ladder for them to climb. So we have to make investments in manufacturing and infrastructure and in education, and especially in communities that have not had the economic success that other communities have. And so sometimes that's in communities of racial minorities, and sometimes it's in communities that may have really been doing well with one industry and now if you're trained in that industry, the jobs aren't in that industry anymore. So you have to kind of focus on where there is need, and Hillary and I have a very focused plan on investments in cities and investments in economic and workforce skills for people who have been hit the hardest. That's number one. Number two, criminal justice reform. We talked a little bit about this at the debate the other night. There have been some just heartbreaking cases of communities where there's a big gap between the police and the community. And this isn't every community, thank goodness, but there are a number around the country where that's the case. And when that gap exists, it's very dangerous for people in the community. It's also more dangerous for the police. But when you close those gaps by doing community policing and building strong bonds between the community and law enforcement, suddenly not only are people more respectful of each other, but you also find that the cities tend to be safer. I talked a little bit about this, the case of all the ones that caught my attention and that I just find myself really grappling with was this young man in Minneapolis who was shot, Philando Castile. I have a son who works in rec and parks in Minneapolis, and Philando Castile worked for the Minneapolis school system. And he was this wonderful guy who got a job as a janitor and then worked his way up to being a janitor supervisor. And I think all of us might remember our days in elementary school, like there was always a janitor that, was like a really friendly person, or a school nurse, or a bus driver. Didn't always have to be the teacher. It was somebody else that kids really related to. He was that guy. They called him Mr. Rogers with dreadlocks. He was a big guy, but a loving person, and he was a law-abiding person and a great worker. And then he was killed by the police in an inexplicable way. But when the story came out, what came out about it was not only that he was killed, but he had been stopped by the police in his community in suburban Minneapolis 40 or 50 times before he was killed. Completely law-abiding, wonderful person, uplifting children every day. That just tells you that we've got to get better at this. And so Hillary and I have a plan. And look, I worked on this when I was mayor in Richmond. Our city's 60% minority, and we had a really high crime rate when I came into office. We needed to bring the crime rate down, but not by muscling people around, but by building these relationships. So more community policing, better mental health services, because an awful lot of the incidents that often spiral into some problem, that there's an individual that may have a mental health issue that's never been treated. Sometimes it's even been diagnosed and there's never been treated. And not every police officer is a trained mental health worker too. That's too much to put on every police officer's shoulder. So we're going to invest in community policing. We're going to try to do more on the mental health side. And then I really believe we need to have reasonable rules about guns. I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I'm a gun owner. But we can have reasonable rules, background record checks, things like that, to make sure that dangerous people who are not supposed to get weapons don't get them. I was governor in Virginia during the horrible shooting at Virginia Tech. It was the worst day of my life. And I have a feeling it'll always be the worst day of my life. And the sad thing was, this is going to sound odd to say, when it happened, after the dust settled, I hope this is always the worst shooting in American history. I hope there's never one that is worse, but now there's been worse shootings. The one in Orlando was worse. And so we've got to do something, and that will make our community safer too. And then finally, in the area of civil rights, there has been a concerted effort around this country after generations of trying to open up the franchise to vote. There has been a concerted effort to make it harder for people to vote. And we're going to fight against that with every tool in our body. In fact, what Hillary and I want to do on that is have automatic registration for people who turn 18 and just have it automatically. And that doesn't mean everybody will automatically vote, but let's just have registration on your 18th birthday. If you're eligible and you turn 18, let's just have registration happen just like that. You show up with a driver's license and you're a citizen, you're 18 years old. Well, you're going to be able to vote. So that is the third thing we want to do. There's many more things too, but those are some of the things that we believe in. Yeah, can I come right here in the center? Yeah, please. Oh, okay, so I've already, but no, okay, I'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm being confusing, so I will go first row, then second row. Okay.
First, thank you so much for coming to Nevada.
Yeah.
I'm originally from New York State, and I actually voted for Hillary for United States States Senate.
Great, great.
I've been volunteering for the campaign, and I've noticed there's so many angry people out there. Very angry, and I'm deeply concerned about the alt-right and the American Nazi Party and the people who are so anti-immigrant who have come out of the woodwork thanks to Donald Trump and Mike Pence. I'm the granddaughter of immigrants. And my question is, with Mitch McConnell and his buddies in the Congress, how are you and President Clinton going to move forward with comprehensive immigration reform?
Very, very good question. So, Hillary has said legislatively there are two things in the first 100 days. We're going to do a big jobs package, which will be some of the issues I talked about, investments, education, focus on small business, and the second thing is immigration reform. And look, we got close in the Senate in June of 2013. We passed an immigration reform bill with nearly 70 votes, very bipartisan. And a lot of my Senate colleagues are telling me, if you guys win, do this right away. Bring immigration reform right back, because many Republicans, they really want to do immigration reform. They're worried about, will their voters punish them, but they really want to do immigration reform. But the second thing is they will say, this is a race where the issue is very central. You guys are for immigration reform, Donald Trump's for deportation nation. So if you win, there's a mandate. And the mandate is, we don't like deportation nation, we want to do immigration reform. And they said, act on that as fast as you can. Don't let that fade. Just come right in and do it. And the other thing that gives us a little bit of an opening on this is, my prediction is that we're going to win, and that one of the stories is going to be, we won because the Republican Party so alienated new Americans that if they want to have any future, they better try to kind of get right and attract new Americans again. Here's a statistic that shocked me. It may not shock you, but it shocked me. We think about the power of the Latino vote. Bill Clinton in 1992 got about 55% of the Latino vote, and 20 years later, Barack Obama in 2012 got maybe 67%. So that's really good, and it increased over 20 years, and the raw numbers increased. But listen to the stat I'm going to give you about the Asian American vote. Bill Clinton got 31% of the Asian American vote, and then Barack Obama 20 years later got 71% of the Asian American vote. So it's interesting, when the Republicans fight against illegal immigration and they're thinking about Latinos, an awful lot of immigrants who aren't Latinos hear it and they think, I don't think it's the illegal that they don't like. I think it's the immigrants from anywhere that they don't like. So the Republican anti-immigration reform thing is pushing all new American groups over our way in Virginia and all around the country. So I think there's going to be a moment where that's going to be clear. There will be a mandate in the election. And a lot of the Republicans I talk to, they believe, do this and do it fast, because we will need to adjust somewhat and find a path forward, or we're going to consign ourselves to irrelevancy. So that is my hope. Hillary has a great track record of working across the aisle, both when she was First Lady to get the CHIP program done, but also as Senator. She had a lot of really important bipartisan achievements, and that's how I work too. I was a governor in Virginia with 2 Republican houses. I'm a proud Democrat, but I have a really good ability to work with Republicans. So we're going to try on the economic package and on immigration right out of the gate, first 100 days. That's what we're going to tackle. Please.
I'm Seth Morrison.
Hey, Seth.
You just stole my question.
Oh, was it about working together?
Yes, I just moved here from Virginia, so I had the privilege of working on all your statewide campaigns.
Wow.
And
I tell
voting
you.
for you.
Don't tell me you moved out of Virginia because of the poor quality of elected officials.
No, I moved because I wanted to bring Nevada to the Democrats.
All right, good. Here.
But what I noticed is, especially when you were governor, where you had Republicans in the legislature, how well you worked together, and how Virginia functioned in spite of being totally polarized.
Yeah.
How are you, as president of the Senate, going to break the gridlock that's been killing all of us?
That would be an hour-long answer. Because there's a lot of reasons for the gridlock in Congress, but I'll just give you the fast version of it. There's a problem in life that is, like by a factor of 10, a problem in politics, and it is this problem. We're not very good listeners anymore. I don't know whether it's short attention span or too many other claims on our attention. We are not very good at listening. And when you get into Congress, and everybody's, oh, I got to do a fundraiser, and I got to race back home, or the people will think I've gone Washington, then folks don't spend time with each other, and they don't learn about what others' priorities are, and then no wonder we don't find common ground to move forward. The way that I have been able to be successful, I think, I mean, I'm good at some things and bad at some things, but I think I'm a good listener. I had a Republican speaker when I was governor of Virginia, and we disagreed 80% of the time. But we spent a lot of time together, and we did a lot of talking. We couldn't agree on that. One day it was something really important to him. The next day it was something really important to me. We kept talking. And then we learned, wow, you want to do open space conservation? So do I. I wouldn't have known that. Well, then let's do it. And we did. You want to ban smoking in restaurants and bars? In Virginia, the capital of tobacco. So do I. Okay, we'll work together and do that. Here's something about politics that I've noticed. In the Senate, if a Republican magically retired today and the governor appointed a new Republican to walk in that chamber that I didn't know, I could guess 10 things where that person and I would have different points of view, and I'd be right on 9 out of the 10. But if you said to me, guess 5 things that you have in common, I would have no idea. You only find the overlap in the Venn diagram if you spend time talking to somebody and listening and finding out what they're interested in. And then you can spend your time working on that and setting aside everything else. Every quarter in the Senate, we get a report that ranks, okay, here's who you vote with the most, and then down to the 99th, here's who you vote with the least. When I get that report, I go to the 99, and it's usually exactly the same person, but I'm not going to talk about who it is. I go to number 99, and I say, hey, did you see this? There's got to be something we can work on together. And then we have fun. We find something, and it may not be earth-shattering. We find something we can work on together. So I think one nice thing about Hillary is she knows so many of these folks, from First Lady and then 8 years in the Senate and then 4 years as Secretary of State. She kind of already knows what people are into and what are the tripwires you don't want to walk across. And I think I have a pretty good sense of that, too. So the key is trying to work in the overlap and not spend your time where there's no overlap, because you can just grind your wheels over and over again if you're working where there's no overlap. But there is overlap, and we just have to find, and I actually think this economic and immigration issues, if we act fast, we'll be working in the overlap and we can make something happen. Let me come over to this. Yes, ma'am, right? Oh, no. Yeah, ma'am, right here. Please.
My name is Marilyn LaShawn.
Hey, Marilyn.
And thank you, Mom and Dad, for coming. We really is nice to have you here. I have 2 bumper stickers on my car.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton and McCain is on the left. And
Clinton, it must be Clinton Kaine. Or is it?
Clinton Kaine.
Okay. I thought you were saying that you're an independent, and it's an old car, so you know.
And on the right is a very small one, red, white, and blue, and it says, I stand, sit with John Lewis. My question's real simple. Did you sit with John Lewis?
Yeah. Does everybody know what we're referring to? So I'll tell the story. John Lewis is this amazing, he's member of Congress from Georgia, but his amazing personal story is civil rights leader with Martin Luther King in the 60s, and led the march on Selma and was brutally beaten as he led that march back in 1965. I've had a chance to go to Selma with him to retrace the steps of that march and hear him tell the story. But this year, I think it was in June or July, John Lewis led a sit-in one day on the House floor. I mean, the sad thing is I can't even remember which of the gun tragedies it was. There's been so many, but it was after one of the mass shootings. I think it was right after the Orlando shooting in mid-June, and he led a sit-in on the floor and kind of stopped business. And I went over and sat, and if I had my phone, I'd show it to you. But I took out my BlackBerry, and I have a beautiful picture that I got John Lewis in profile, a profile in courage, sitting right there on the floor in front of the speaker's dais. And they did that for hours just to make the point that we can do better than that. And I'll just tell you a story. I mentioned this briefly at the debate the other night. Didn't do justice to it because we were, on a time clock. But I told you about the shooting at Virginia Tech, which was so horrible. But there's one of the 32 people who were killed at Virginia Tech that I'll just never forget this person's story. They're all precious. I know all of their families. I still am in touch with them. I had one of the students who had been shot and survived at the debate as my guest the other night, Lily Hoptu. But one of the guys who was killed was a man named Liviu Librescu. And Liviu was a 75-year-old hydrological engineering professor. He was a Holocaust survivor. He'd been born in Romania, and as a child, his family was put in a camp, and he survived, which was kind of a miracle. Survived the Holocaust. Many Jews, after the war was over, left Romania because they said, look, this is hostile. But he said, I'm not leaving my home. So he stays in Romania. Now the Soviet Union takes over Romania. He would join the Communist Party, and he was Jewish. And so they were down on him for being a Jew and down on him for not joining the Communist Party. So he had a PhD. He was teaching at the university in Bucharest. They wouldn't let him travel to conferences. Then they wouldn't let him publish. And then they wouldn't let him teach. But eventually he figures out a way to emigrate to Israel. So by now, he's probably 40 years old. He's survived the Holocaust, and he survived the Soviet Union takeover of Romania. In 1985, he gets a one-year visiting professorship at Virginia Tech. He goes for 1 year, and he so loves Blacksburg, Virginia, that he stays for 22 years on a succession of one-year appointments. The day of the shooting at Virginia Tech, he was teaching a class, and as shots started to be fired, he went and he stood in front of the door and blocked it with his body, and he told his students, climb out the window. And he was killed. And I worked with the government of Israel to make sure that his body could be taken back promptly for burial in Israel, as is the custom, as his family desired. But what just always stuck with me about that is if somebody can survive the Holocaust and survive the Soviet Union, take over his country, but then fall victim to gun violence in the United States, what does that say about us? And so of all the victims that I think about, and there's sadly way too many, his is the one that just keeps telling me we've got to do something better. And so that's why I've been a supporter of reasonable rules, and that's why I went over and sat in with John Lewis that day. Let's see what I have. Right here in the very corner. And I'll go 1, 2. So, okay, and then I'm watching Doug. Okay, I'm going to go to these two, and then I need to go. So,
hello.
yeah.
Thank you very much for Tuesday. My name is Joël Noulamera, and I will be a first-time voter because we became Americans, sorry, not Canadian.
Oh, that is fantastic, Joelle. That is great. So you just turned 18, and this is your...
No. I have a comment and I have a question. My comment is, I've been doing construction since my husband moved me everywhere, okay? And history usually teach you something, right? Not to some people, but usually,
Yeah.
okay? There was a shame wall in Berlin, Germany, and people were able to go under, around, above. Okay, so whatever wall would be. If you are a man of construction, you should know better that, tunnel exists. First comment. Second, I've been working 24 years in psychiatry with children from 0 to 18 and with their family, of course. And when it was said, and I'm absolutely for science and the global warming and everything, but when I heard that people are going to lose their job because of that, I think that there is a principle in psychiatry. A person is like a wall, again, and you don't take a break if you don't know what's going on, and if you are not able to put back something, okay? So did you think about something for the people who are going, the minor, who are going to lose their job, and I don't know anyone, but still, it kind of bothered me. And so, I was thinking, like in some area, they give early retirement, they train the people, they pay them for 3 years so they could have a different training. And so maybe the young people, like my daughters, 31 and 34, and they comment on it, they say, you have to take care of everyone. So what?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'll just say to Joelle's question, so Virginia is an interesting state because we see climate change now because we have sea level rise. It's very dramatic in the Norfolk, Hampton Roads area, only second to New Orleans in terms of the amount of sea level rise, and it's impacting neighborhoods and businesses and the naval operations there. So on the one hand, we're seeing climate change every day, and on the other hand, 5 counties in Virginia are in Appalachia and produce coal. My wife's family is part of the families from Big Stone Gap, which is a big coal-producing part of Southwest Virginia, and those communities have been hit pretty hard. Actually, they were hit even before we started to talk about climate change by technology. We mine as much coal in Southwest Virginia today as we did 50 years ago, but we do it with 1/10 the workers because we use so much more machinery. And then you've got the concerns about CO2 and climate, and then natural gas is now cheaper than coal, so a power plant will buy natural gas rather than coal. And so it's very difficult for those communities. And you're right, the answer has to be not to pretend that we can just suddenly wave a magic wand and make coal as cheap as natural gas. It's not going to happen. But we have to invest in retraining workers and also in some new industries. When I was governor, and I worked with those communities to put new industries in Southwest Virginia, and some industries that are starting to thrive. And we're not just talking about Virginia, we're talking about Kentucky and Ohio and a number of the Appalachian states, but we do owe it to communities. And not just in coal fields. If there are other industries, the textile industry, a lot of that has gone overseas. We should only do trade deals if they're good, but if communities get hurt, we have an obligation to go in and do retraining, and then also try to find new industries to come up. You're absolutely right about that. And please, and this is going to be my last question.
Got to get it on camera. Okay, let me start off by saying that welcome to Henderson.
Thank you.
for coming out.
Good to be here.
And my name is Steve Chin. I'm a proud volunteer for the Nevada State Democratic Party, and I'm involved with voter registration. And let me quickly say, everybody that's here, if you've moved since the last time you voted, please, you have to re-register. We have somebody outside right now, so please do that if you haven't done so already. But my question to you is, let me get you in frame here, is...
I'm now feeling the pressure.
And it kind of... Oh, that's terrific. It pertains actually to this gentleman's question about gridlock, and my question, I guess, is more about how government works than anything else. And what it is gerrymandering, and how does this go on where, God willing that the Dems take back the Senate, but the House is entrenched with the conservatives, and what can be done so that these members of Congress are beholden to their voters? Sure. That's the big problem why we have gridlock.
Yeah, great question, Stephen. And I would say there's a lot of things that we would want to reform about campaigns. We would want to reform campaign finance laws. We would want to but I almost think if you just were to pick one reform that would have the most impact, I almost think it would be this one. And so what can be done? So, and just, I'm sure everybody knows this, but basically, whoever is the majority party in a state, and it could be the Democrats, could be Republicans, but whoever it is, they will rewrite the state legislative and congressional districts to put the minority party into as few districts as possible, and then that creates a majority of districts for the majority party, but it tends to lead to an awful lot of districts that aren't very competitive at all, so once you get elected, you really don't have to be that responsive, and it also tends to drive polarized politics where you live in a super Democratic district or a super Republican district, working across the aisle, working in the middle, bringing people together. That tends to be not, that high a priority under gerrymandered districts. What can you do? First, states are doing a lot of this. The states are doing redistricting reform and mandating that districts be drawn by nonpartisan redistricting commissions. And a handful of states, about 5, have done it. And what they found is that it tends to increase competition, and that's very positive. So that's one way to go. And I would encourage everybody to focus on that at the Nevada level, and we're focusing on it at the Virginia level. It would also be the case that Congress could do something too. We couldn't forbid, I don't think constitutionally, Congress could forbid gerrymandering of city councils and county board of supervisors and state legislatures, but we could pass a rule that would require that the allocation of congressional seats, federal seats, be done in a fairer way with a nonpartisan redistricting process. Now, if we did that, virtually every Democrat today would vote for it, and virtually no Republican would vote for it. So now senators would vote for it because we just represent states. We're not districted at all, so it would be an easy bill maybe to get through the Senate. But in the House, it would be really tough right now. But the way to do it is if the House ever gets like really close, so that both parties think, well, I could be in the majority or the minority today or tomorrow, that's when you can usually find, that's when states usually do gerrymandering reform, is when they're very closely divided and they decide, well, I could be the winner, I could be the loser, so let's go ahead and make this improvement. But I do think that if we could do that, it would have a huge and positive effect on American politics. Hey, thank you, Stephen. Thanks. Great questions from all of you. So good to be with you.